Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen. I'm a racial trauma therapist and I am the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So I'm a bit late today, I'm a bit later than normal. I've been doing my 7 a.m. ones, but this morning I just did not want to get up. I didn't want to get up and do all that stuff at 7 a.m. So you've got me in the afternoon today. So those of you that were complaining about yesterday about the time difference, this one should be a lot easier. Hi Emily, thanks for joining. So today I want to talk to you about why I enjoy being a therapist. So just to give you some context, it was my business anniversary on the 1st of June. It was my recovery anniversary on the 2nd of June. So 8 years business, 13 years in recovery. And so I wanted to celebrate those anniversaries with doing a series of live streams, 30 days. So 30 live streams in 30 days. And today is I think it's day 19 today, actually. Hi, thanks for joining. Yes, I've just been sharing different things, different insights that I've had in the years of being in business and being in recovery. Just wanted to share what's on my heart. People have been sending in questions and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Just kind of sharing what's been going on and stuff like that, and just sharing answering people's questions. It's been really nice doing it. So yesterday we talked about the challenges of being a therapist. So today I want to talk about why I love being a therapist. And I think the most important thing that I love about being a therapist is just seeing the process that people go through when they do this work. There's nothing more beautiful for me than seeing a client that comes into my practice that I start working with, quite often very mistrusting, in a lot of pain. Sometimes they don't have a lot of hope. Sometimes they're quite desperate. They're really desperate for things to change, desperate for things to be different. And just to see somebody come in and just seeing the humility that I feel in seeing their willingness to kind of really dive in and start doing this work, and then to over time just seeing that trust being built and seeing them begin to unpack and reveal themselves is just the most humbling, most beautiful thing that I see. One of the beautiful things that I love about being a therapist, because doing this work is not easy, and it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of guts to actually allow yourself to be vulnerable in front of somebody else that you don't know very well, and share stuff. Like I was saying in previous live streams, quite a lot of times, people will share things with me that they've never shared. It's the first time that it's coming out of their mouth, so it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage for people to share their stories with me, and for me that is really, really humbling. And just to see people find themselves and really start to connect with themselves and accept themselves in ways that they're not used to. They're not used to it. So to kind of reclaim their sense of autonomy over their bodies, over their black bodies, over their thinking, over their values, over who they are, is really, really beautiful. The other thing that I really love about seeing clients change is, well, one of the biggest changes that I see with clients is their ability to learn how to set boundaries. And that can be a really, really frightening thing when you're used to being a people pleaser, when you're used to people expecting you to behave a certain way, for them to turn around and start saying, no, actually I'm going to put myself first, or no, that behavior is unacceptable, or no, you can't treat me that type of way. That can be very scary for a lot of clients. But what I often see, and actually I've seen this in the mastermind group actually as well, somebody will set a boundary with something. Usually it's a family member or something like that, somebody close to them that they set a boundary with, and then they come into the space, and either they'll share it with me or they'll share it with the group and stuff like that, and just to just to give them that support around understanding that setting that boundary was important, and how just seeing everybody else support them, see the other ladies supporting them around what they've done and stuff like that. It just helps them, but that person feel more grounded, because what normally happens in those situations, or what can happen in those situations, is that if you don't have the support, if you don't have a community around you, you can go and set the boundary, come back, And then what happens is what I explain to clients is afterburn. Okay, so afterburn, it means that, you know, after you've set the boundary, you feel guilty, you feel shame, you start questioning yourself. Oh my God, did I make the right decision? Am I being mean? All this kind of stuff. And especially if the person that you've set the boundary with has had a negative reaction. If they don't like the fact that you've set the boundary, if they're starting to make up noise because you've set the boundary, if they start saying that you're selfish or start bad mouthing you to other family members or whatever, you start feeling guilty about setting those boundaries. You start feeling guilty about setting those boundaries. So the afterburn kicks in and you start to question yourself, and then you start thinking, should I go back and change it? Should I have made the right decision? Just because that person kicks off and whatever, it doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision. Okay? But the good thing about therapy, whether it's group or individual, is that I support the client. I support the clients through those changes, because those changes are really hard, and that fear of rejection, that fear of being judged, that fear that they're going to be talking about you, all of that stuff is real. All of that stuff is real, and it's really painful. It can be really, really painful to go through that stuff, knowing that family member that you're going to be rejected. You know, you may already have been rejected by family members, but to set a boundary and then be rejected all over again can be really, really painful. Can be really, really painful. So, you know, and I always say to people as well that when you're detaching from family members, from people, you know, when you recognize that you're trying to build up your self-esteem, you recognize that there's certain dynamics in relationships that don't work for you, when you're detaching from other people for whatever reason, it's always important to have a community to attach to. Okay, so you're detaching from people on one side, but you need to have a community that's supportive of you to attach to on the other side. Once you've got a supportive sisterhood, community, recovery meetings, therapy, whatever it is, once you've got a supportive space to attach to, it makes it a lot easier to do the boundary work. Okay, because the boundary work is everything. The boundary work is everything. You know, because that's when you start to set boundaries with other people, that means that you're really starting to understand what your needs are. You're starting to understand your sense of self. You're starting to understand your values. Because once you're clear about what your values are and what your needs are, it's much easier for you to go, actually, well, that doesn't work for me. Why am I still doing that? It doesn't work for me. You know, so just to see clients step into their own sense of self and to reclaim that part of themselves is a really beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing seeing that. The other thing that's is, I wouldn't say I enjoy it, but it's a part that is humbling for me to witness. And this is when clients really get to that point where they can start releasing, they start being more vulnerable, and they start releasing. Maybe it comes through tears. Maybe it comes through, it's just that there's a softer side that comes up, you know, and this is when the defenses are down a little bit. Maybe we've had quite a few sessions and they start to build up a lot more trust. They're starting to be able, they've got used to being able to name what's going on for them. They're starting to name their feelings, name their experiences, all that kind of stuff. And the wall starts to come down, and they start to feel more comfortable to get vulnerable. So, you know, there might be sessions where they feel more comfortable in allowing themselves to be vulnerable, and there's going to be tears. And although it's not nice, obviously I don't want my clients to be upset, but at the same time I also recognise that the crying part of it is sometimes an important part of them releasing, you know, stuff that they've held on to. So sometimes it can be tears of relief, you know, sometimes it can be tears of joy, of just being able to just relax and just surrender to it. And this is what I talked about before, about clean pain and dirty pain. Okay, it can be clean pain and dirty pain. When those tears start coming, that tells me that they're releasing a lot of clean pain, because it's what's going on for them in the present. You know, yes, tears are a release. They're such an important release. And I think a lot of us are trapped. A lot of us are trapped because we've been told from childhood, you know, part of a lot of our culture is, you know, don't stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. I heard that multiple times, and I hear it from clients. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Or stop being so sensitive. Stop being so emotional. I hear that in the community a lot as well. Stop being so emotional. And so we've learned to kind of shut down that part of ourselves that natural human part of ourselves that needs to be able to cry and let ourselves go in that sense, so that we can, that it helps us. Actually, tears are really, really important for us for our nervous system regulation as well. Tears can help us help us to regulate our nervous system, because again, it's a release, it's a surrender. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable with another human being without actually apologizing, because a lot of us, we start crying or whatever, and people start apologizing, oh, I'm sorry, and they're quick to pass tissues. Sometimes you just got to let the tears come out. Sometimes you've got to let the tears come out, and this is something that I always do. When clients start apologizing, and I just tell them it's okay. It's okay, and that's my cue to just be quiet. To just be quiet, and I always say to them, take your time. Cry as much as you need to. It's good to get it out, and just encourage them and just reassure them that it's okay to be vulnerable. And quite often, what I sense from clients when they're in that place is it's almost like the child part self. It's the child in them. It's the child in them that wasn't allowed to cry, that wasn't allowed to be vulnerable. It wasn't safe for them for the child self to be vulnerable. So quite often I sense that it is the child self that comes through, that's allowing that's the tears are coming from that perspective. Again, so that's really quite humbling to be able to hold that space for them. And also that just with the tears and the crying and stuff like that, grief as well is another thing that we have as Black people, we have a very, very complicated relationship with grief, because of the history, because of the history of enslavement and living under these oppressive systems. This whole thing about not being allowed to express how we feel, not allowed to be invulnerable. And I get at some point, if you think about our ancestors on the plantations and stuff like that, they weren't allowed to express emotion because it could have got them killed. Our ancestors who were enslaved were not allowed to express emotion because it would have got themselves killed. It could have got them killed. Okay? And the same, like in our family of origin. If you express any sort of type of emotion, sometimes I've heard stories from people, if I didn't, when a parent was hitting them, okay, when a parent was abusing them, if they didn't cry, they would hit them more. And then if they did cry, they would still hit them. So it's like, this whole thing around, our relationship as a community to being vulnerable is just being vulnerable for us is never really been safe. Being vulnerable for us has never really been safe, which is why a lot of us don't want to feel vulnerable, because vulnerability is not a safe place for us. Well, we have to find a space to be able to really allow ourselves to surrender to those feelings. And this is one of the things that I love about being a therapist, because I know how much relief that the clients get from doing that. I know how much relief they get from being able to say stuff that they've been holding on, that's kind of closed off their heart, closed off their ability to connect with people for years, because they're holding all of this stuff and it just hasn't felt safe to get close to anyone. They haven't allowed themselves to get close to anyone. So Dee's saying they themselves or their loved ones could be in danger. Exactly. Yeah, so it's not just them that could be endangered, it could be their loved ones as well that could get in trouble or be harmed if they expressed emotion. So this is something that we've learned. We learned that in on the plantations as a survival technique, and then it's kind of been filtered down. We've kind of adapted that sort of behaviour and do it to each other as part of inside our family of origin, and then it becomes just the way things are, and we don't question it. And then we wonder why so many of us find it so difficult to connect with each other or at a human level, why we find it so difficult to be vulnerable with each other, and really connect with each other, because it just hasn't felt safe, and we don't want to be ridiculed. And it kind of reminds me as well, actually, when you sometimes see people on social media, especially black men, and it kind of reminds me of, what's that guy's name? I think it was Tyrese, the singer. When he was going through some of his struggles, and there was, I think he did a live stream or something, and he was crying, and people couldn't wait to make memes out of it and take the mickey out of him and laugh at him and stuff like that. So as a community, That's something that is really important for us to think about, because what we're essentially telling us as a community, that is, we're still not allowed to be emotional, we're still not allowed to be vulnerable, we're still not allowed to express how we feel about certain things, and actually that stuff is making us sick. When we don't allow ourselves to do these things, especially with each other, it makes us ill, and it actually blocks us from having relationships that are empathic. We need to be able to have relationships with our people that are empathic. Okay, being able to be compassionate, express compassion, being able to express empathy is something that we need more of in our community. Let's stop being so emotional, and more, how can I support you? If somebody is very quick to get you to stop being emotional, or they're telling you to be strong, or they're telling you to do this, that and the other, they probably can't sit with their own emotion. That's why they don't want you to feel emotional. If people start telling you that you're being too emotional and that you need to do that, you stop doing this and stop doing that, it's because they're not comfortable with their emotion. So they need to stop you from feeling emotional, so it doesn't trigger all their own stuff. Okay, but this is where the conversation around clean pain and dirty pain is really important, because when we hold on to all of that stuff, when we don't express it, when we don't allow ourselves to be with our feelings and all of that, it can then get stored up, and then it gets translated into something else. That's when we start being mean to each other. That's when the passive aggression comes out. That's when we start being violent to each other, because we've got decades and decades and decades of resentment and upset and hurt that's not been dealt with, that's not been expressed wasn't expressed at the time. So we end up holding all of that stuff. Okay, we end up holding all of that stuff, and then it just gets projected onto something else. So this is why, when I work with clients and they talk about whatever their issues are, this is why talking about the history and stuff is important, because quite a lot of times when we're upset about stuff, when we're angry about stuff, okay, there's going to be a certain point, there's going to be a certain amount of that anger is going to be about what's happened in the present, but there's also going to be a lot of it that's probably come from the past, especially if you've not dealt with it. So if you find yourself in situations where, sometimes we see these, I've seen this on social media actually, one tiny little thing will happen to somebody, and then that person will just explode. Somebody will just explode into this fit of rage. That's when you know that person's got a lot of old dirty pain. Okay, because it doesn't make sense that the way that person's reacting in the present is in alignment with the response. The response is just so explosive in comparison to what the actual thing was that happened to them. It just doesn't make sense. It's out of alignment. So that's when you know that person's got a lot of stuff that they're holding on to. They've got a lot of dirty pain that they haven't dealt with, that's been passed down to them. They're holding it. Maybe they've had stuff that's happened to them in their childhood, in their situation, and it just gets blown out of proportion when something little happens. And as black people, with ancestors, excuse me, ancestors that were enslaved and all the rest of it, okay, we're a community we've got a whole load of dirty pain. Okay, yeah, there's some pent up stuff. We've got a whole load of stuff, okay, in our community that's dirty pain. Because our ancestors, when they left them plantations, none of them went to therapy. None of our ancestors went to therapy when they got off them plantations. So where do you think all of that, in my case, my parents are from Jamaica, okay, so that's 240 years of enslavement and torture and trauma. Where do you think all that pain went? It didn't just vanish into thin air. It's still there, and it's still being played out until somebody decides in the family that the buck stops here. It's still going to continue to get played out. This is one of the reasons why I went into therapy in the first place, and one of the reasons why I enjoy being a therapist, because it's about reclaiming my sense of self. It's about reclaiming my sense of self, reclaiming my autonomy as a person, and then as a therapist, I'm sharing the tools with other people so they can do the same thing. That's another massive reason why I wanted to do this, why I love being a therapist, because I'm giving people tools how they can reclaim their own autonomy, just like I did. And that, breaking those generational patterns, is the only way that we as a community are going to be able to move forward. A lot of people will talk about, oh yeah, we need to support black businesses, we need to practice group economics, you need to learn your history, all that. And don't get me wrong, all that stuff is important. Learning about your history, where you came from and all the rest of it, that is important. Practicing group economics, supporting other black businesses, that's important. But tell me why, doing all of that stuff it's not going to be worth doing any of that stuff if you as a self, as a person, is still broken internally, is still traumatized internally, still doesn't trust black people because of what happened to you as a child. Okay, so it's absolute waste of time doing all of that stuff if we as a community are not doing our individual and our collective work. Okay, we have to do our individual work and our collective work. There are so many different layers and different parts, okay, to us healing as a community. And a lot of us think that we're going to get free just by learning about our history and doing group economics and earning we can try and earn our way out of our history. No, you can't. No amount of money, no amount of having money on it, just by itself is going to make you feel any better about yourself. You're going to act that shit out. You're still going to act it out whether you got money or not. You can't avoid doing the work. You can try and dodge it. You can try and escape it. No matter how many nice houses you got, or how many nice cars you got, or how much you're flashing your money here and there, how many watches you got, how many pair of Louboutins you got. It doesn't matter how much of any of that stuff that you've got. If you haven't done your work, you're always going to act that shit out. The only way out is through. Okay? The only way out of this mess is through. And that means you have to do the work. And doing the work means that you have to be willing to be open to having the conversations, to being curious, to exploring what's going on for you. Grieving the losses. Okay? Grieving the losses that we've had in our community. Grieving the loss of our culture. Grieving the loss of having parents that can be present for you, grieving the loss of having sisterhood, grieving the loss of having a village, grieving the loss of not having our African languages, grieving I could go on. Grieving the losses of not having our cultural traditions and rituals and all of that stuff that if I was born in Africa, if I was born somewhere in Africa, I've had a completely different experience. But my ancestors were taken from the motherland to Jamaica. Forced migration and were traumatized for 240 years. That's a whole load of grief that I need to be doing. That's a whole load of grief that we need to be doing as a community. And you ain't going to solve that by spending money on this, that, and the other. It's not going to. It's just. And a lot of us think that we can do all of that through spending and doing, and it just doesn't work like that. It's like a plaster. That's just a plaster. That's just putting a it's like putting a bandage on a broken foot. That's what that is. Your foot is broke up. Okay, you can't walk on the foot, but you think it's going to be okay by just putting a little plaster on it and sprinkle a little bit of glitter on it. Here's a better analogy. It's like putting on a pair of Louboutins when your foot is broke up. Your foot is broke up. You can't walk on the foot on the foot because the foot is broken, but you're still trying to put a pair of Louboutins on it. And you're thinking, well, I've got a pair of Louboutins on, so it doesn't really matter that my foot is broken and my ankle's mashed up. I'm just going to put the Louboutins on and everything's will be fine. And you hope people are going to look at your shoes rather than your foot. But what needs to be done is that we need to just be honest with ourselves about the fact that the shoes are not going to heal you. The shoes are not going to compensate for you having a broken foot. You need to go to the doctors to get the foot looked at. Okay, you need to go to the doctors to get the foot looked at. And what I help clients do is understand that the shoe analogy, okay, is how they survived. The shoe that they're trying to put on the broken foot is how they survived. It's not something to beat themselves up with. It's not something for them to to feel ashamed about. That's how they survived. We've had to survive for years. All of us have got different survival mechanisms that we've had put in place. Okay, and so it just means that we've had to, we just have to. My job is to help clients reframe. To help clients reframe. Okay, and that the broken foot is that it's safe for them to let somebody touch the broken foot now, and put the plaster on it that it needs, to reset it and put the plaster on it as it like it needs. Okay, but that's only going to happen if that person goes to the hospital and gets the foot x-rayed and all of that stuff. It's important for us to do that. And sometimes it can take, it takes guts. It takes guts to do it. It takes a lot of courage to do that, because people don't want to feel the pain. People don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to make the commitment. They know, and I think people know that their relationships and stuff are going to change as well, and they're afraid of more loss. They're afraid of more rejection. They're afraid of being alone. People are afraid of being alone. They're afraid of change. Some people want the fantasy of doing this work, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with doing the work. And you can't have both. You can't have both. And this is one situation where clients, you just have to trust the process. You've got to be willing to trust the process, and you need to focus on the action, not the outcome. People are so obsessed by the outcome. Oh my God, if I do this work, am I still going to be am I going to still be able to have a relationship with that person? They're scared of the outcome. They're scared of what it means. So they hold on. They think they tolerate and tolerate and tolerate, because they're so afraid of the outcome. But sometimes you just have to take the action. And I think I got to a point in my journey where I was just like, I can't just keep focusing on. I was more scared. Actually, I got to the point where I was more scared of regret. Okay, I was more scared of regret of not doing this work than I was of what the outcome was going to be. So I just thought, you know what? I'm already in pain. Okay, I'm already in pain. I've already been rejected. I can't be rejected any more than I've been rejected. I can't be rejected any more than I've been rejected. So all that was left is I had to focus on my child, my relationship with my daughter. That was, at the time, that was my motivation for going into therapy and going into recovery, is that I needed to break the patterns so that I could give my daughter something different. That's why I did it. And eventually it changed. It's actually wanting something better for myself as well. So that was really good that I did that. But at the end of the day, I had to make that decision that I just had to trust the process. And it was terrifying. But just having my own sense of self, and one of the things I love about being a therapist as well is that I'm constantly growing, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly changing, I'm constantly, I shed a skin every so often. Each season that I go through as a therapist and as a business owner, I shed, but then there's old parts of me that get shed. And I can thank that part of me for helping me survive. I can thank that part of me for holding me throughout the time. But it's time for me to step into a new skin. There's a part of me now another new part that needs to grow. So I'm always growing. Every time I do every time I'm reading books, I'm also thinking about my own process, as well as how I'm going to apply it to, how I'm going to apply different things to my client work and stuff like that. So it's very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful, because I have so much more confidence now. And back in the day, I used to hate being seen. I had so much shame. I was just like, I didn't want to be visible. I didn't want to know how to speak up for myself. I was really codependent. I was terrified of what other people would say about me. All this kind of. Now, I'm like, that's your business. I'm like, that's your business. How people respond to me, and it doesn't mean I go around being mean to people. It's not that. It's just that I'm not going to take responsibility for things that aren't my responsibility. That's the difference. I'm not going to take responsibility for other people who get bent out of shape because I've set a boundary. That's to do with them. That's nothing to do with me. My responsibility is to make sure that I'm in my integrity. And sometimes it doesn't, I don't need to make a big song and dance about stuff either. There was a time where I would get so resentful because I would be like, oh my God, I need to say this to that person and I need to tell them. And sometimes I'm just like, do you know what? That person doesn't have the listening. And it's not my responsibility to teach them or to talk to them about stuff that is basic in a relationship. If you don't understand how to be respectful, then, unfortunately, I'm going to have to move you from my inner circle to my outer circle. And I've had to do that a lot, many times over the years. I've had to move people from my inner circle to my outer circle. Because here's the real talk. Not everybody can come with you on a journey. Not everybody wants to do this work. Not everybody wants to do this work, and not everybody can come with you on the journey. So sometimes you have to let people be who they want to be. That doesn't mean I don't like those people. It doesn't mean that I don't respect them. But I respect myself more. I respect myself more. And I made the decision that, in order for me to continue on my journey, I need to be with other people that are also doing this work. I need to be in the room with other people that are also doing this work that is reciprocal. Okay? I did a live stream the other day about, the power of reciprocity. Go back and watch it if you haven't watched it. That has been a game changer for me. It's one of the principles of our ancient ancestor. God, that's pure goddess energy. Being in relationships that are reciprocal and not allowing myself to be, bled dry by people. If you're not coming with the same energy, especially when it comes to me doing this work, if people aren't coming with the same energy, thanks but no thanks. It's that simple. And being a therapist has, the training itself, the doing the extra trainings, the books that I read, and all of that kind of stuff. It's really just built my confidence, and I've learned how to say no. I've learned how to say no to people in a much more respectful way. So someone's saying block and delete game is strong. I've become adept at cutting people off who show abusive tendencies. Yeah, it's just, and I'm not even, it doesn't even have to be, there are more subtle ways of doing it as well. So I don't make a big song and dance about it. Sometimes I don't even block or delete people. I just let them get on with it. I just let them get on with it. Sometimes I might not, one way that I might do it is I just might not be in contact with them as much. I tend to, now I'm very, very clear and focused about who I spend my time with. I recently did an audit. And just on how I'm spending my energy, who I'm spending my time with, all that kind of stuff. And I wrote a list of, all the types of things that I'm doing, the type of groups that I'm in, the memberships that I'm in, when I'm talking about recovery and stuff like that, what meetings do I go to? And I'm asking myself all these questions. Are the spaces that I'm in at the moment, are they reciprocal? Are the people giving me the same energy that I'm giving them? Are they really committed to their own personal growth, or are they stuck? Are they doing their work? Are they doing their work? So somebody else is saying that is a key thing for me at this junction: reciprocity and maintaining the integrity of my boundaries. If you can't for yourself, then you're not going to hold it. Exactly. And sometimes people don't always get that. They think that, well, what's the problem? Or what it is, they have an expectation that it's okay for them to get support and information and stuff like that from you, but they're not bringing anything to the table. People don't always understand the importance of reciprocity in that sense. And sometimes people will stay in those spaces where they're overgiving and not receiving anything, because being needed by other people gives them a sense of it's part of their identity. Okay, it's part of their identity to be in a space where they're needed by other people, and that's where the codependency creeps in and becomes destructive, because then that person then becomes resentful. And I know, because I've done it. I know because I've done it. I've been in a situation where I've just really wanted to connect with people. So I'm that one that will go into different spaces and I'll help people and I'll do this and I'll do that. And then when the energy is not reciprocated, then I get resentful. I cut that shit out long time. I cut that shit out long time. So whenever I use a lot more discernment now. When I go into different spaces, I use a lot more discernment. I check things out. I see who's showing up, who isn't showing up, and if there's any sort of hint, that I feel that people aren't showing up, and there's an expectation that I'm supposed to quote unquote be mummy, especially if they know that I'm a therapist. This is one of the difficult things about being a therapist. People think it's okay to kind of do all this stuff and they expect you to show up and play mum and be the one that's holding the space. No, because I also need support. So those boundaries are really, really important. And what I love about being a therapist and doing this work is that now I have the confidence to actually walk away. I can walk away from those situations as a therapist now because I'm so confident in what I'm doing. I know that I've got a lot to offer, but I also need to be in spaces where the energy goes both ways. And if it's not going both ways, then I'll politely say, look, I don't know if this space is right for me, and I exit left. I exit, and I can still wish them well, wish them love and all the rest of it, peace and love and light, but I'm not going to stay in that space. And it's not from in the past. I would have tried to fix it. In the past, I would have tried to fix it. I would have tried to have conversations. Why is this happening? Why? But I'm not doing none of that now. Because people have got to have their own, people have got to make their own, they've got to learn their own stuff. And it doesn't mean that I think that I'm better than anybody else, because I'm not. I just know what my needs are. That's what it is. I just know what my needs are. And if I need to find a space that is reciprocal, okay, I need to be in a space where my needs are going to get met. It's not about me being better than anybody else. It's just that we're all on different paths. We all have different expectations. And my expectations are very different from other people. So, if I'm in a space where it's not happening, then it's okay. I give myself permission to go. And sometimes people don't like it. Sometimes people don't like it because they want me to stay and be mummy. That's what it is. They want me to stay and be mummy, and I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And it's, setting boundaries with people is so important. Is so important. But the work, because of the work that I've done, it's a lot easier for me to say no. It's much easier for me to say no. Okay, so what else can I share about what I love about being a therapist? Oh, I love working from home. I love working from home as well. Sometimes I get to plan my day and stuff like that as well. Being self-employed as a therapist, I get to plan my day. I can change up the day if I want. If I'm not feeling too great, I can give myself a break. Obviously, if I've got scheduled clients and stuff, and I have to get myself together so that I can show up for my clients, which I always do, because I would never let my clients down like that. But I could, if I'm not feeling great or whatever, and I've got clients, what I'll do is I can normally juggle the next day or the next available day for me to be able to juggle what I'm doing. And I give myself a bit of a, I can reschedule stuff around if I feel like I need a bit more space, which I absolutely love. So I really enjoy, working from home. But at the same time, I also love the diversity, the diversity of the different things that I do. That I don't just do one-to-one. I can do workshops. I can do retreats. I can do this and that, and I love the different things that I do. I love the diversity, the way that I can diversify my products and services, and that I don't have to answer to anyone. I love that. And if clients say to me, like at the moment, I'm getting a lot of emails, messages, all that kind of stuff, with people telling me different things about what they're struggling with. This is all great information because then I can create curriculum around it. I can create masterclasses around it. Those people that are in my mastermind, I'm thinking about some classes and stuff that I'm going to be doing next year. What are people really struggling with? And I'm getting if I was working for an organisation or anything, I probably wouldn't be able to create all of that stuff. So there's the part of me that is really creative, and I love being able to do all of that. I love being able to create all the content. I love being able to serve my community in with all of that stuff, being able to listen to them and create content that's relevant. That kind of adds to the whole thing around, service. I love serving the community. I love serving the community. I love, again, it's empowering. It's empowering because these systems are so brutal, these systems are so savage. The way that we've been treated over the last 500 years is absolutely atrocious, and sometimes the powerlessness that I feel around it is really intense, and I get really angry sometimes when when all of this stuff is popping off and people are getting murdered on TV and all the rest of it on social media and no one's doing anything. It's so annoying, it's so upsetting, it's so frustrating. So for me, when I'm sharing all of this stuff and sharing what's going on and serving my clients in that way, it's empowering for me to do that, because I'm giving people tools around how they can deal with stuff, how they can deal with their racial stress. So Dee Dee's saying, can you break down the juggling aspect a little bit, please? What that would look like if you are not well and having clients that are scheduled. Okay, so let me give an example of that. So I have 1 day a week. Actually, I do have other days as well, but at the moment there's one main day a week that I see my one-to-one clients. Okay, so let me say this: there's different aspects. There's different aspects that come with being self-employed. Okay, so there's the front end aspect, and then there's the back end. Okay, the front end is when I'm actually seeing clients. Okay, so I see clients one-to-one. There's the front end is also me doing these live streams. All the stuff that you see on my website, that's all the front end stuff. That's, if we're thinking about it within terms of shops and retail, it's all the stuff that you see at the front. Okay, you see all the services and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so there's that. In the back end, is all of the stuff that helps the front end stuff work. So an example of that might be me writing the content for this live stream, me doing the bullet points for this live stream. Okay, when this live stream is finished, in the back end, what I'll do is I'll download the video from my Facebook page, I will upload it to YouTube, then I'll put it on my website, then I send it out to my email list. So I mean, so all of that stuff is the back end stuff, yeah. And then on a Tuesday is the days that I see most of my clients. My one-to-one clients is on a Tuesday. Okay, sometimes I get clients see me on other days or whatever, but most of the time, most of the ones that I see on a regular basis, I see them on a Tuesday. Okay, so if I'm not feeling great, okay, on a Tuesday, maybe I wake up or whatever, I'm not feeling that great. Obviously, I normally feel, if I know that I've got, I will adjust my Sacred Sister time practice to accommodate that. So it might be that I make sure that I go out for a walk. I make sure I do my meditation. I make sure I eat, okay? Because it might be just because I'm tired or whatever. I do my meditation. I do all the practical things that I can do, okay, to feel better. I see my clients. But what I might do is, say on a Wednesday, it's more back end stuff. I might not have clients on a Wednesday. I might be doing back end stuff, okay? So I might decide to myself, well, instead of doing my numbers and all of that kind of stuff, which takes a lot more brain work. It takes a lot more bandwidth, okay, for me to be doing figures and all that sort of stuff. It might be that I just do the stuff that I was saying before about downloading the stuff, writing copy. Maybe I think about creating content for the next week or whatever. Does that make sense? So what I do is I check in with my energy level, and I can adjust what I'm doing the next day based on my energy level. Like as an example as well. Let me use today's a really good example actually. I had some grief come up today. One of the reasons I didn't do the call at 7 o'clock this morning, as opposed to now, is I had some grief come up. Which is really difficult. And I don't know whether I haven't quite unpacked all of it yet, which I will unpack with my I will unpack it with soon with my therapist or whatever. But I felt like I really needed to sit with it, and I need to give myself permission to just sit with those feelings and do some journaling around it and just see what feelings come up. So the way that I adjusted that is, okay, I'm not just going to jump up at 7 o'clock, even though I felt grief. Okay, no one's going to die if I don't do my live stream at 7 o'clock this morning. Okay, so the kindest, compassionate thing that I did for myself was to leave it until the afternoon and do it now. So I'm still doing it, and in giving myself permission to rest during the day, okay, it means that I'm going to show up more. I'm going to be able to show up more present when I'm doing this live stream now. I feel in a much better place to do it now, even though the grief is still there a little bit. It doesn't feel as intense as it did this morning. Okay, so I don't know if that does that kind of make sense a little bit. Does that make a bit more sense? So you know, this is the beauty of being, and also this is me practicing what I preach. I talk to my clients about the importance of self-care and stuff all the time. You know, and that is an example of how I practice what I preach. I'm not just gonna do something just for the sake of it and keep hustling. I'm not all about hustle culture. Black people have been hustling for 500 years, you know, for other people a lot of the times. And we don't always get what we deserve from all the hustling that we're doing. So sometimes it's about really taking care of ourselves and actually giving ourselves permission to calm things down, to slow things down, to pause. You know, that's an important part of doing this work. So yeah, I'm a real advocate for that. But that's something that I really love about being self-employed. You know, like I said, it's about really being able to take care of myself. You know, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to be 55 this year. You know, I'm going through menopause. You know, so you know, because anyone that's going through menopause will know how difficult it can be. And even though I'm taking my CMOS and I'm taking my black cohosh and all the rest of it, I'm doing hot yoga and I'm doing all the things that I need to be doing to take care of myself. But sometimes I do get fatigued. Sometimes I do feel out of sorts. I do have my moments, you know. So Didi saying, I'm glad you're feeling better, and it makes perfect sense. Thank you. I woke up to make the live and wondered I wondered where you were. I'm glad you took that time for yourself. Oh, I'm sorry you got up this morning for that. But yeah, tomorrow I will do it at 7 tomorrow. So unless something drastic happens, but I'll be here tomorrow morning at 7 to do the tomorrow's one. But yeah, so that's an example. And I have to practice what I preach. Like I said before, like I'm in this game for the long haul. I want to be doing this for a long time. So if I want to be doing this for a long time, I have to also put my hands up and say that I'm human. So I can't just, and I have to listen to my body. I have to listen to what's going on for me if I want to show up and being transparent and stuff like that. Like I've always am. It's important. So now you understand. Now you understand that I'm practicing what I preach. It's not that I don't want to do the live streams or whatever, but it's just that I also need to look after myself. I want to show up fully. I want to show up fully. And yeah, so it's important to be able to do that. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else I've left off this list. Yeah, no, I think that's it actually. Oh, the last one is, no, I talked about that. I talked about breaking generational patterns. But yeah, so yeah, I think being able to talk about this stuff and especially talking about all the different, things that I'm learning as a therapist and serving clients and just really being just being able to be of service, and creating a legacy. I love being a therapist because I'm building a legacy. I'm building a legacy of what it means for black people to really take care of themselves, especially black women. And I love that. So God forbid when I'm ready to leave this planet, there'll be all these live streams everywhere so that will carry on my legacy. Hopefully there'll be more books and stuff like that. I want to, there's a book that I've been trying to write for the last few years. I need to get cracking on that because I want that to be published soon. But yeah, I'm writing a book at the moment about recovery, about black people in recovery and stuff like that as well, which is, yeah, I mean, there are loads of other books I want to write as well, but that's the first one I need to write. But anyway, I digress. So look, that's it for today. Okay, so yeah, I just love being a therapist. If there's anyone out there that is thinking about being a therapist, I've got a link in my bio where I'm thinking about doing a business school, a black business school. For students for therapists that are either want to refresh their own business strategy and all that kind of stuff, or if you're a student therapist, you want to set up in private practice and you don't know how to do it and you want support. There's a you can sign up and just register your interest, and if there's enough people that are interested, then I will definitely I'll definitely think about doing that next year. So to think about that again, if you haven't got your tickets for the the Art of Receiving retreat on the 15th of July, Saturday, 10 till 2. Click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So that's me for today, folks. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.